Greetings everyone and welcome back to Banners on the Wall. Anthony Russell here, and well, I decided I was going to do it this way. We're going to get out the stream graphics and we're going to have a good old rundown of this edition for Banners on the Road as the second season starts and we go back to the very beginning. My journey through British hockey this year. Well, the first game we went to was actually back in Basingstoke for a pre-season game. But the first competitive game we went to featured these two sides, and as the playoffs begins, we return there. This is the Banners on the Road for Sunday, the 31st of March, 2024, Easter Sunday, for the second leg of the NIHL Division 1 South quarter-final of the playoffs between the Solent Devils and the Invicta Dynamos. Final score from the Gosport Arena: Solent Devils 7, Invicta Dynamos 1, which means following the Devils' 4-3 victory in Kent the night before, they have won this quarter-final by 11 goals to 4 on aggregate, and the Devils qualify for the Southern playoff weekend this upcoming weekend, the 6th and 7th of April, at Alexandra Palace. I picked this game out for a bunch of different reasons. Some of it was practical. I'm recording this on Tuesday the 2nd. I've literally just started a new job outside of hockey today, and I decided that going massive distances wasn't the best of ideas. I had lots of stuff on this weekend, family bits and pieces, and the other reasons for it were purely hockey related. Yes, looking back at the form from the table from this season, Solent have beaten Invicta every single time. Beat them every league encounter, beat them on the Saturday night. But looking at this one as well, I thought to myself that if any game was going to chuck up potentially a bit of a surprise or a really hard-fought battle, or at least something to let me write about, then this was going to be it. And also, like I said, the first competitive game of the season that the BOTW did for Banners on the Road was Solent versus Invicta in Gosport. So why not start back at the beginning? Looking at the other fixtures, as soon as it became clear that the Basingstoke Buffalo were not going to be playing on the Sunday, I said to myself, I need to find a second leg to go to. Writing about a first leg for a series like this, you can do it. But the problematic thing is that the entire article is pretty much rendered useless by what comes after it, unless you get a massive, massive blowout, which, for all the games I was able to get to, was never really going to happen. The National Division was never going to feature this weekend from a Banners on the Road perspective because, let's face it, the entire weekend was a dead rubber. The only two teams with anything to play for were Peterborough and Telford, and I ain't driving that far for those games. So it was always going to be a Division 1 or Division 2 playoff encounter. Some of the games ended up being one leg. Didn't fancy doing Streatham on a Sunday evening. Guildford on a Saturday against Solent. That was only really going one way. Peterborough versus Cardiff in Div 2 would have been interesting, but no. It was time to head back to Gosport, which has served me very well this year, and also to get another look before finals weekend at the Solent Devils, an organisation who I've done a few bits and pieces with, of course, across the course of this season. There will be another detail in the Devils before the summer comes out, don't you worry about that. Either way, a 4-3 win for Solent the night before set this one up perfectly. I got there to Gosport much earlier than I usually did. I was expecting there to be a big crowd, and there was. Credit to the Dynamos fans. They travelled in number, they travelled in voice, and they were very, very much up for it the entire game. Irrespective of the result, you have to credit the Dynamos fans for the simple fact that they just did not stop singing along, cheering along, back their team the entire way. Hell or high water, rain or shine. Put some respect on the fans of the Dynamos for the sheer backing that they gave their boys in the midst of everything else that was kind of going on with this one. The game itself had this interesting air about it. Now, we obviously were all aware of the retirement of Aaron Strawson, although it slowly started filtering through the ring that this would be the last game in Gosport's, at least for the time being, of Drew Campbell. The oldest active player in the National Ice Hockey League structure was due to call time as well. But would his or Aaron Strawson's finale come here, or would it come at the Palace? We were about to find out. And the game started, and it was all Invicta. For the better part of the first 6 or 7 minutes, it was all Invicta. Power, precision, wave after wave after wave of attack, and Aaron Taylor just had to sit there and soak up the pressure. Aaron Taylor is one of those netminders who I'm never quite sure how to read him, given the fact I've only really seen him in Gosport, which of course is a rink with its own unique atmosphere and a unique foibles to it, it's sometimes going to be very hard to know how a goalie's going to perform. But I knew that the Devils were going to need Taylor to perform on the night if they were going to get anywhere, just as Invicta were going to need Owen Ryder to do so. But the opening salvos were just pressure from Invicta, pressure from Invicta, pressure from Invicta. But they weren't really troubling Taylor too much. The Devils were just sitting back and soaking up the pressure. Sensible game plan. They knew Invicta needed to score. They didn't. They knew that they were going to come hard with them, and they just had to take a step back and just wait it out and let the Dynamos come to them before they could kind of push themselves on. And then power play. Regan O'Neill ends up sitting, unfortunately something he would do a fair bit this evening, and the Devils just went straight to work. Worked the puck around nicely, nothing too difficult. Murray tees up Alex Cole, bang, 1-0. Out of nowhere. Blinked and you almost missed the shot. And you knew that was going to come. You knew the Devils were always going to get a goal, but being up by 2 goals in a game of hockey, especially one that's effectively 120 minutes long, was nothing. And then it was 2. Steve Osman, for whatever reason, every time I've watched Solent this year, just never seems to have quite come out of his shell. But right when they needed one of their better goal scorers, and one who certainly at this level of hockey is known for his ability to put the puck in the net, flicks the puck on, it takes a piece of Ryder, hits him on the way through, catches him on the back, and over the line it goes. In after 8 minutes and 50 seconds, it's 2-0. And immediately, there's that part in your brain of, oh boy, is this game done already? To the Dynamos' credit, they fought back. O'Neill takes another penalty, but in what was the best and most direct attack they'd had all game up to that point, short-handed goal. Some really good work by Mads Toon, feeds James Laming to break in and fire past Aaron Taylor. Now, it should be said that these two across the duration of the game were Invicta's most impactful players, so the fact they ended up getting the goal, looking back at it in hindsight, made perfect sense. But it gave everybody in the away end a little bit of hope and put everybody in the home end a little bit on edge, because if they get 1, they can get 2. Ultimately, at that point, the two teams started cancelling each other out. End of the first period comes. 2-1 on the scoreboard, 6-4 on aggregate. The game is still on a knife edge, although Solent, of course, have nudged their nose a little bit further in front. And then about 4 and a bit minutes into the second period, one of the most bizarre goals I've seen live with my own 2 eyes. And it was the man of the hour, from a Gosport perspective, Drew Campbell. Now, a lot of people would joke about the fact that, older folks, they, sometimes struggle to get up once they fall over. Well, Campbell just made the best of this. Having fallen to the ice, the puck was still there as he was desperately trying to control it before the defenseman skated in and took it away. And Campbell scored, sat down on the ice, hooking his stick around to hook the puck in past Ryder. 3-1. And a goal that ultimately, really, probably shouldn't have been allowed to score, but the legs may not quite be there as they once were, but the hockey sense clearly has not left Drew Campbell. 3-1, 7-4 on aggregate, and it was all starting to feel like it was getting a little bit away from the Dynamos. And then it became 4 when Liam Coleman was teed up by Alex Murray, and then it felt even further away. 25 minutes and 1 second gone in the second leg, and Solent have doubled up on the score on aggregate. It is 4-1 on the night, 8-4 on aggregate. And I was shocked that Invicta didn't take their time out at this point. More penalty issues for the Dynamos. Gregor McCallum was called for tripping, which was relatively easily killed off. And then Carl Lennon gets into a bit of a battle with Dan Lackey, and Mr. Thrower, the official, only calls one side of the altercation. Carl Lennon is called for slashing. And you can pretty much guess what happened from there, especially if you've read the bits and pieces. And it would be with one coach sat in the box, the other coach would put the dagger through the heart. Alex Cole turns provider. Alex Murray is on the blue line between the 2 points, steps into it, rips it home. 5-1 at the end of the second period. And it was all just an air of inevitability from that point. Now, I've been at games, many of us have been at games, where teams will be goals down. I've been at a game, a few people might remember it, but I've been at a Basingstoke Bison game where they were 5-1 down to Romford at the end of the second period and won in overtime 6-5. It can happen. What we saw in the final period from the Solent Devils, and if you've listened to Zero Pucks Given this week, I did a little bit of a game recap for Ben on there, but without a shadow of doubt, in the years I've dipped in and out of Gosport, I've never been the biggest attender there because, of course, I was involved with Basingstoke, and now this journey I've been on has taken me around. But I've been to Gosport a fair few times over the last couple of years. This was the most controlled, calm performance I have ever seen from a Solent Devils side. Everything that they needed to work worked, and by 40 minutes into the second leg, they had killed this game off and just smothered Invicta out of the game. Yes, there were goals late on. There was a late power play goal for the Devils with just about 5 minutes left. Gregor McAllen had been called for that horrible delay of the game, puck over glass penalty, and lather, rinse, repeat. Invicta were the victim of their own mistakes again. Coleman to Murray to Cole, 6-1. And then with 2 seconds left to play came goal number 7. Some of the guys further down the lineup were given the opportunity to get some ice time. Charlie Wedge sent Luke Forsyth away behind the D, skated in, fires, scores, 7-1, game over, tie over, up the hill go the Devils to Alexandra Palace, and the Dynamos call time on 23-24. Now, I'm aware, having listened to bits and pieces, that the Dynamos are very clearly frustrated. They were frustrated after the Saturday tie, given the penalty to Ollie Bronneman. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy surrounding an incident where Bronneman felt that he'd been slew-footed. There was a pylon. Kane Russell missing this game because he was knocked unconscious in that fracas as well. And there's been a lot of talk from Invicta about their dissatisfaction with the officiating. That is their right to do that. And was the officiating at times tough to understand? Yes. There were some things that I thought would have been called in a regular season game that weren't called here. Do I get the frustration? Yes. Ultimately, for me, the biggest issue here was that the refereeing was not at the level I thought was very good. However, the referee was relatively consistent for both sides in terms of what he called throughout the game. The big difference here was Invicta lost their cool and Solent didn't. Now, I've been at enough Solent Devils games where they've fallen foul of the officiating and not been happy. There were some bits that didn't make sense to me. Players allowed to skate inordinately close to netminders, and players getting very, very frustrated. As an example, Mark Pitts, once he realised that he was not going to be called for skating close to, maybe bumping into Owen Ryder, and all that was going to happen was he was going to get shouted at by Invicta players, you bet your bottom dollar that every opportunity Mark Pitts got, he was skating across the top of that crease. Contact made or not, the only people who seemed to be called in those situations were the Dynamos. But the problem was the Dynamos didn't learn from their mistakes. The other big issue for Invicta was that they just got outworked in the game. Not outworked in terms of effort, because let's be clear here. For 60 minutes, a Dynamo side that was missing some quality of its own, they didn't give up. But the direction was hard to understand. It was pure emotion. Playoff hockey is emotion. This is the biggest and best time of the year. Hockey players, I've said it before, are hardwired for playoff hockey, but you got to have a plan. The Devils are an emotional team. They're not some sort of logician-based robots or anything like that. Solent are an emotional side, but one of these two teams had a plan and kept their cool. Now, I find Invicta a very, very interesting watch. There's a lot to them. They've got very, very good guys. It's not that they didn't try. It's not that they didn't put the effort in. If anything, 7-1 probably flatters Solent a little bit, surely for the effort that the Dynamos put up. But they weren't impactful going forward. The shots of quality weren't there. The defence didn't seem to be able to stop things. The penalty kill didn't do that as well as it could have done. I mean, Ryder didn't have the best of games. In fact, dropping one shot into his own net. It was just all the bad things all together, all at once. Officiating that they struggled to understand and couldn't and didn't adapt to. Toon and Laming being the only really effective strike force going forward, and 2/3 of a line isn't going to be enough to beat a team like Solent in their own barn. The quality shots didn't come in. It just didn't work. On the night they needed it to work, it did not work. And on the other side, the Devils, where everything that they tried worked for them, where they stuck to their game plan, stuck to their systems, and ultimately they just managed to push their way through. What does this leave us with? Well, Invicta have to go back to the drawing board a little bit. I venture that a few of these guys, along with Aaron Strawson, may not be back next year due to life, work commitments, although if Carl Lennon can find a way to keep hold of Mads Toon, I think he'll be on to a good start. There's a lot of decent quality in that Invicta side at this level, but it's putting the jigsaw together to make the picture. You can chuck guys out there together. Lord knows we've joked about Milton Keynes on the BOTW What's Current stream enough about just throwing together good guys and hoping it works, but there just needs to be a bit more, especially against a team like Solent who don't have a choice but to be well drilled. It's not a joke to say it. Solent don't have a big budget. They get the guys together and they have to be a team that's more than the sum of their parts because they don't have the financial resources to do more than that. But if Solent can play like that next weekend, they are going to cause a problem for Streatham on Saturday. They are going to have to make Ben Painter think very, very hard about how he approaches them. Because yes, it will be a bigger ice pad than Gosport, but Solent finished 4th this year. They finished 2nd the last couple of years. Solent play half their games on a pad that is not Gosport. They have to play hockey on bigger ice. And they find ways to win on bigger ice. And if they play with the same sort of mentality that they've just played with on Sunday to make Invicta humble, then Ben Painter really needs to think very, very hard about how he's going to approach this. Because it's not going to be a walkover. It's not going to be as straightforward as it was. With all due respect to the MK Thunder, they are not as good as Solent. They're not as good as any other team in this division. That's why they finished bottom. There is work to be done for Streatham to beat Solent this coming Saturday at Alexandra Palace. For Invicta, stand up, dust down, try again. For the Devils, one more hill to climb. A sincere, well done, good effort. Thanks for the entertainment this year to the Invicta Dynamos. We of course send our best to Aaron Strawson as he retires from the game, a fantastic servant of the sport, whether it was in Sheffield on the Isle of Wight or for the last decade and a bit in Kent as well. Thank you for all that you've given to the sport. Enjoy retirement and whatever comes next. What happens next year for Invicta remains to be seen, but I venture they will not be particularly happy to see Mr. Thrower at any stage in the upcoming season. For Solent, enjoy the Palace. Let's see how you do. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to the NIHL. It is obviously Tuesday night as this is coming out. Tomorrow night on the YouTube channel, the BOTW What's Current stream. We will go through our bits and pieces from the last weekend, cover the last weekend, have a look at the upcoming weekend for the start of the National Division playoffs and the respective weekends at Sheffield and Alexandra Palace. And then, as this is coming out on the 2nd of April, you can join me alongside Nicky Watt from 4000 and Counting and Ben from Zero Pucks Given live on the 4000 and Counting bits and pieces, 9 p.m. on Thursday, where we're going to have a collective look back across the season, across the divisions of the NIHL. So that's 8 p.m. on the BOTW YouTube channel for the What's Current stream, and then the sort of the great get together Thursday night at 9 p.m. over at 4000 and Counting. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Be happy, be safe, and so long until next time. where the playoffs will well and truly be underway. The end of the season is drawing nigh, but come Sunday, there'll be champions across the country. And after that, time for the National. Take care, everyone. We'll see you soon.